quiet, ominous, shadowy. That's how the remnants of the USS Selma sat beneath the gray, rain-beaten skies of Galveston Bay, Texas. A ghost of a ship, massive yet hollow, half devoured by waves and time. Its cracked concrete hull jutted from the water like the ribcage of a long-dead leviathan. Its dark cavities whispering stories the ocean refused to give up. On a lonely, rain-soaked Tuesday morning, an adventurous woman named Grace Benson paddled toward the wreck on her vividly orange kayak. The only color on an otherwise desaturated landscape, the type of color that shouldn't exist near a place like that. Grace wasn't just any casual explorer. She lived for the forbidden, the abandoned, the unknown. Shipwrecks were her sacred temples, and secrets buried beneath waves were her scriptures. But the USS Selma, this wreck, had a different aura. Local fishermen avoided it. Birds rarely perched on it. And even tour guides refused to sail too close during low tide. Grace knew this, and she went anyway, because curiosity real, burning curiosity, has a way of pulling you toward things you should never see. Little did she know, today the wreck would finally reveal something it had kept hidden for nearly a century. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Grace paddled silently through the bay, raindrops tapping gently on her kayak like soft fingertips. Thunder groaned quietly in the distance. The closer she got to the wreck, the more the world seemed to dim, like even the storm didn't want to disturb whatever slept inside that ship. Then she saw it. At first, she froze mid-stroke. Her paddle hovered above the water. There, deep inside the skeletal remains of the concrete hull, was a glow, a faint, warm, orange glow. Light. Grace blinked, confused, squinted, but it didn't vanish. It flickered. "Impossible," she murmured, heart thumping. There were no power lines near the wreck, no electricity, no reason, absolutely none, for a warm light to shine from inside a ship abandoned since 1922. Grace's seasoned explorer instincts flared, and beneath that just a little was fear. But curiosity drowned it quickly. She paddled closer. The rain softened, but the wind picked up, tilting her kayak as she moved between the jagged, concrete slabs jutting from the water. The wreck loomed over her massive, oppressive, a monolith of forgotten history. The glow grew brighter, not blinding, just steady, persistent, alive. "Where is that coming from?" she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. Grace's mind raced with possibilities. A prank? A stranded fisherman? Another explorer? But even then, how would they keep a lantern burning this long? And why inside a hole barely large enough for a person to crawl through? She steered toward a small opening, one she never noticed before. She leaned in. Inside was a room, a preserved chamber, unbelievably intact compared to the collapsed surroundings. Grace's throat tightened. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous wrong, but historically wrong. Shipwrecks don't preserve rooms untouched. Not in seawater, not for 90 years. Yet here was a room frozen in time, lit by the warm glow of a lantern that looked vintage, the kind you'd expect to see in a museum, yet here it was, shining defiantly inside a place no human had entered in decades. Her heart pounded against her ribs, her breath became shallow. Still, she pushed aside her fear. Grace lived for discoveries like this, and so she leaned closer, peering into the narrow portal, and what she saw next rooted her in place. Inside the chamber, resting atop a rotted wooden crate, was a lantern, an old-fashioned, brass-framed, glass-sided lantern, glowing warmly. Grace stared at it, her mind struggling to grasp the logic. Lanterns don't burn for minutes, let alone decades. They need oil, maintenance, oxygen. Yet this one burned calmly as if someone had just lit it. Someone who should not, could not be there. Grace's pulse thundered in her ears. "Hello?" she called out cautiously, her voice cracked in the confined space. Only water dripped in reply. Her fingers shook as she clutched the kayak for stability. "Is anyone in there?" Nothing. Only the glowing lantern, its flame flickering lazily as though mocking her confusion. Grace felt an eerie tightness in her chest. She had seen strange things before, on her adventures, echoing rooms, shadowy silhouettes, unusual wildlife, but never a lantern burning inside a sealed, underwater collapsed chamber of a century-old concrete ship. This was wrong, This was impossible, and yet, here it was. Grace did what any responsible explorer would do. She paddled back to shore. But the journey felt heavier than usual, as though the bay itself had thickened around her. The storm clouds hung low, and the water churned gently beneath her kayak. She couldn't stop glancing back at the glowing hull, expecting irrationally that someone might be standing there watching her leave. Back on land, her hands still trembling, Grace immediately reported the discovery. At first, the authorities thought she'd mistaken a reflection sunlight bending through wet concrete or a metallic glint, but when Grace described the room in detail, its preservation, the lantern's style, its exact location, they began to take her seriously. Maritime historians were summoned. The local Coast Guard dispatched a small team to verify the claim. Even amateur shipwreck divers arrived, eager for a glimpse of something unprecedented. Grace had unknowingly ignited a spark of excitement in Galveston, a spark that soon became a wildfire. Within hours, whispers started spreading through town. "There's a light in the Selma. Someone's living in the wreck. It's haunted." A lost chamber was found. News outlets picked it up. Archaeological groups requested access. History enthusiasts speculated wildly online. Some believed the lantern was a hoax. Others insisted it was paranormal. A few suggested the lantern belonged to a diver who got trapped inside long ago, whose spirit never left the ship. But one theory chilled Grace the most. What if someone is still living in the Selma? It was absurd, illogical, and yet the way the lantern glowed so steadily, so intentionally, Grace couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't been alone. She returned the next day with the investigators, but when they approached the same chamber, something had changed. The lantern was still there, but it was no longer lit. The room was darker, colder, and somehow emptier, as though whatever spark Grace saw had vanished with her departure. No footprints, no tools, no new damage, nothing disturbed, nothing. The chamber looked untouched since the ship sank, but Grace swore she saw that light. The flame, the warmth, and the investigators didn't doubt her not because they believed in the supernatural, but because the chamber itself didn't make sense. Concrete doesn't preserve rooms this intact. Seawater corrodes everything. Pressure collapses structures. Barnacles and algae invade every surface. Yet this room was strangely clean, like someone had been taking care of it. Over the next few days, more professionals studied the site. Some divers attempted to access adjacent compartments. Others examined old construction records of the Selma, one of the few concrete ships ever built. They learned that the area Grace discovered was part of a maintenance storage room, a place rarely visited even when the ship was operational. Historically, no records ever mentioned a lantern stored there. No person was ever reported missing in that part of the ship, and there was no reason, none at all, for a chamber sealed by decades of sediment and corrosion to suddenly glow from within. Grace watched the experts work tirelessly, her mind spinning with possibilities. Had she witnessed some chemical reaction? A reflection? A trick of the storm's light? Or had it really been a lantern flame? Every logical explanation fell apart. Even the historians admitted defeat. In the end, they released a public statement. The cause of the reported light inside the USS Selma shipwreck remains undetermined. No artificial or natural light source was located. The chamber's preservation defies typical degradation pattern. Further study is needed. But study or not, the phenomenon was never replicated. The lantern never glowed again. Months passed. Grace returned to the wreck countless times, paddling her orange kayak into the bay, hoping to catch even the faintest flicker, but nothing. Still, the story spread far beyond Texas. Urban explorers came from other states, drawn by the mystery. YouTubers filmed videos, speculating everything from ghost sailors to lost wartime messages. Local businesses even sold Lantern of Selma keychains. The wreck, once dismissed as an unsightly lump of concrete, became a pilgrimage spot for thrill seekers. And through it all, Grace remained quiet. She never embellished the story, never claimed it was supernatural, never changed a detail. She simply told the truth: "I saw a lantern burning inside a chamber that shouldn't exist," and to this day no one has disproven her, not divers, not scientists, not skeptics. The mystery remained untouched like the silent wreck itself. 1 year later, almost to the day of her discovery, Grace paddled out to the Selma one last time. The water was calm, the sky clear, the wreck eerily serene. She approached the same opening. The chamber was still there, unchanged, undisturbed. And then, as she pulled closer, she felt something. A shift in the air, a warmth brushing her cheek, a flicker barely perceptible in the corner of her vision. Grace leaned forward, heart racing, but when she blinked, the glow was gone. She exhaled shakily. Was it a memory? A trick of sunlight? Or something else acknowledging her presence? Grace didn't know, but she whispered softly into the quiet chamber. "Whoever you were." "I saw it. I still remember." The water lapped gently against her kayak, as if in reply. She paddled away slowly, leaving the wreck behind, half expecting the chamber to glow again. But it didn't. It remained dark, silent, guarding its secrets just as tightly as the ocean floor beneath it. To this day, the mystery of the light inside the USS Selma remains unsolved. Investigators closed the case. Experts stopped searching, but whispers continue to drift through Galveston Bay